7th, 5:30. It's the ACT committee meeting with myself, Nick Allen, Brian McGinnis, and Patrick McCoy. So we'll officially call the meeting to order right at 5:30. Item number 2 is comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Seeing none, we will move on to item 3A, which is our borough manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I don't have a long report because I've only worked 5 days since the last time we met. So we are still looking for a director of human resources. We have a lot of great candidates. We're going to start that interview process very soon, probably next week. And just want to make everybody aware who's listening at home that we have a public hearing scheduled for Wednesday, November 16th at 6:30 in council chambers to go over and take public comment on the proposed operating budget and capital plan and budget for 2023. That's all I have. Thank you.
Happy birthday to me. What a great way to spend my birthday, right? Any questions, comments, concerns? None? Any public comment or questions? All righty, we will move on to item 3B, which again, I'm going to have to table, and this time until further notice. It's item 3C is the Gay Street closure timeline for 2023. Was there an attachment for this? No?
I guess the two issues are when do we want to start the closure, assuming we want to for next year, and is it going to be a 7-day a week or a Friday through Sunday scenario like we did this year? And we want to make this decision with some pace because we want our business partners to be able to plan for the contingencies next year as soon as they can.
Sure. So we can do anything we want now, correct? It's because we have control. Personally, I would be a fan of starting it either when we started it last year or earlier and moving to a 7-day a week, 24/7 closure. That's my perspective. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to, like, we're trying to get like a consensus from committee to pass on to council. Is that the idea? Any thoughts? Mr. McGinnis?
Yes, I'm for moving it earlier from the first week in May until the last week in October. That gives us an extra 6 weeks from I believe what it was this past year, but for weekends only. Again, if we shut it down 24/7, we're going to be losing a lot of revenue that I don't know how we're going to make up with parking, and we need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I also would be in favor of expanding from early May through October, but I guess I'd like to hear some feedback from the bid. And Ms. Brown, you had some comments last month, and I guess from my only frame of reference is the survey that was done. It seemed like the majority of the business owners and people who responded to the survey anyway were in favor of a weekend only, Friday through Sunday. So I'm open to other views.
some discussion about buying power suppliers on when privately owned stuff.
Now the microphone's on. Okay, so I said all that good stuff and Facebook didn't hear me. So that's the bid perspective. I don't know if council had any other questions as far as the bid is concerned.
I guess we did. I feel like it's been so long now, but the first time we did this, it was 7 days a week. Is that right?
We did, and that at the time, we were told, I came onto the bid as the executive director in July of 2020. So council at that point had already enacted a vision for the street in June. And my task at that point was just kind of getting it settled. So it's, somewhat the utilization of the street, I think, is a concern on that Monday, Tuesday, and even into Wednesday in terms of businesses being open, residents and borough visitors coming and patronizing the businesses does become a concern. We did, obviously the 24/7, especially early on, was because that was the only option. You really could not get customers, even with the limits that the government was putting on and, capacity. If, it was an hour wait outside, or I can sit you right now by yourself pretty much inside, customers at that point were still opting to wait outside. So that's why, we had changed. And like I said, we're just really following what the survey responses have been, even amongst the businesses that we have surveyed ourselves. And we presented that data to council before. It has seen the weekends have been the viable option. Obviously, that would require, sign on from the borough and public works, because most likely we would be using some form of the bin blocks in 2023, because the gate option that the consultant had presented, why I think that is a good goal for the borough to strive towards and would be a very safe and aesthetically pleasing solution. It requires grant funding, and we'd have to kind of really explore those options. So I don't think in 2023 that will be realistic.
Sure.
Mhm.
I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yeah, just one other comment. I know last year, police chief, fire chief weighed in on this too. And I think, if I recall, they were in favor of weekend as opposed to the 7 day a week. I assume nothing has changed about that.
I have not heard anything differently.
Great. And I think my perspective on this has been, I think it's, the job of the police chief to advocate for what he does. And for him, I think, and for the department and for all of our emergency services, I do think it's just going to be easier to have the street open. I think that's pretty clear. I remember the meeting that really got me on to like 24/7 was actually because I don't want to put words in Fire Chief Pelness' mouth. I really don't. But he said something to the effect that like it's doable and that like everything can be done. And it might be like less convenient, but that it's doable. And I just see like it's in their interest to keep things as convenient as possible for them. That's great. And that's what they're doing. And I think, as director of the bid, it's your job to try to be unbiased about the survey results you're getting. And I think that's great. And I think you do a really good job. And I also think that, like for me, I've just heard a lot of residents, and based on like some of the resident surveys we got from our traffic consultant, it just seemed like there was a pretty big appetite for a more permanent closure. So that's my perspective. Is I'm here trying to advocate for that vision, and I think like we've done a 7-day week shutdown before. And from my point of view, it seems like our emergency services can handle it. So I think it's a benefit to the town. I think the parking revenue discussion, I think would be greatly helped by some of the GIS data that I know we're building with parking, because I think the question ends up becoming, for me, I think the other side of that argument is, okay, so we're drawing more people into the borough with the street being shut down. Of course, they can't park on the shut down street, but where are they choosing to go park? And I think GIS is the answer to that question, and we can kind of actually look at some real dollars and cents around that, and I think come up with a more holistic answer. And I agree, like I want to balance all the parties as best as we can, but I just think that there's enough appetite from the residents to make this happen permanently, and I agree with that vision. So that's where I'm coming from.
And one thing to add, and not to bring more confusion or more questions to the debate without providing answers, but long term, whether it's council or the town as a whole, I think needs to evaluate the ultimate goal of this. Is it to transition this to a fully pedestrian street? Is it to just do this in the weekend proposal? Because if you look around to a lot of other towns, whether, locally, Cape May, I was just out in Santa Monica, where they have gone that route, there has been a large investment in streetscape change. And you're talking about needing to probably bring the street up more to curb level, adding more brick or stone feature than currently just an asphalt. And, that you're then talking about something that's in the probably tens of millions of dollars worth of investment. And, the money's always a factor in this as well. So, I think it's good to solve the short term of what 2023 is, the safety barricades if we want to do the gate approach, but also what's the long-term vision for the street.
And I agree. I think the worst thing we've done as council is take way too long to make these decisions. I know it's put some of the businesses in a rough position. So I appreciate that we're already talking about this. And I think that's why I think you're right, because if a new business is looking to start a lease on Gay Street, like they need to know
Right.
what the ultimate goal is. And is this going to be a viable place for them in 5 years? So that's something that, like, moving forward, I feel like I want us to learn from is how kind of like indecisive I think we've been in the past about this. And that's why I'm just trying to be as clear as possible where I stand. And it sounds like you guys are too, as well.
And obviously the utilities continues to be, that's an inescapable reality of Gay Street, that there are so many utilities. When Pico was doing this work this time, they remarked to me that, because they do a lot of work in Center City, Philadelphia, that there's more stuff under our streets than under the city of Philadelphia, which is, even older and a lot larger. So that's more infrastructure. So we're never going to get rid of that stuff. And things like the Pico project will happen again, whether it's Aqua, whether it's sewer, whether it's Pico again. So that's a consideration too, in terms of what we do long-term with the street.
And I think a question I have around that actually is, as I know in the past, we've been able to coordinate some of those projects and then get nice new paving done. How hard is it for them to pave at sidewalk level if they have to tear the street up again? Is that something that we could have done? Should we choose to close it permanently?
The director of public works is here. That might be a little bit more in his wheelhouse.
Don Edwards, Public Works Director. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. So one of the concerns about the long-term vision of a permanent shutdown, even though this is a 2023 discussion, but is the idea of bringing the street up to sidewalk level.
Okay.
If it's permanent.
Right.
And we've had Pico tear up the streets and repave so many times. Is that something they could just do? Is just repave it 6 inches higher?
I don't think that's realistic because there are downspouts that come off the buildings, and for stormwater reasons, I think that we probably could not do that. All right.
Yeah, it's good to know. Thank you. Any other public comment, question? Councilwoman Dorsey?
Hi, Lisa Dorsey, Ward 7 Council. This was previously on Public Safeties Committees. The questions last year were from the Chief of Police, Fire, and EMS, were the safety concerns. And compounding that was the work that we had going on with PICO and Aqua. So I don't know if that's on, if we have anything planned for this summer or into the fall that would impact that and should weigh into this decision. The other piece was I'd like to, Councilman McGinnis brought up the impact to parking, but there's also an impact, if we're doing every weekend as an option, the public works labor of, setting it up and bring it. So we should probably do a cost benefit analysis to understand really what it's costing the borough to do that, whichever decision we make. I think Mr. O'Brien raised a good point. There's a tactical decision, Councilman Allen, to the weekend or this year, right? And then strategically, what is our long-term plan for the street shutdown? Is it seasonal? Is it permanent? And then we've got the whole thing with the with PennDOT.
I agree. I appreciate that. Yeah, coming up.
Says, I hope this all gets decided while I'm still alive. It's been a long time we've been talking about this.
Me too.
A couple of things. I went around because I'm doing a petition, as you know. So I walked around to quite a few of the retail stores, and they were all wanting to put the petition out. So La Chic Boutique, This'll Be Perfect, Pine and Quill, David Cat Studio, me. So quite a few of the retail stores are excited about it. They're not quite as sure how Monday and Tuesday is going to be affected, but they think it's probably to their advantage long term because it brings so many people in. And I think that once people get to know that we are a place that you can come all week and walk around with your kids. Another thing, when the people who did the survey was showing that chart up there, and they were talking about dead spaces that were in the street, a lot of those dead spaces were based on being closed 3 days, not a week. And so therefore, a lot of the restaurants such as Tekka and stuff didn't put as many tables out. A lot of those dead spaces will get filled up because people are going to put more out in the street. Another thought that I had was that I know that Tish Boutique is one of the people that's not real excited about it. Probably the only retail store that's not. Totally understandable, because when you look where they are, they're at the end of the street and there's no activity down there. The restaurants are west of them so that no many people come east. So a thought I had was, since now there's Tish Boutique and Tish Kids, you were talking, the big dead space is right there at the east end of the street, right there when the first gate would be there when they walk in. If it were possible to get a grant and put a playground down there, like a little playground for kids, it would bring all the people that come down that would be their customers. So you'd have kids, parents, grandparents, and you'd have a draw kind of at each end of the street so you could bring people down there. As far as parking, I'm going to guess that on the weekends, you're going to get a lot more people in the garage and really increase the parking Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday. You could look back, although I don't think it would be, you couldn't really compare the two at what the increase in parking in the garage was during COVID during that summer, because it'd be hard to compare to non-COVID, because at that point people were working at home. And so it'd be hard to tell what the increase or decrease would be in the garage, because I know garages they were pretty full before that. I don't know how full the garages are now. Are they full in the week? Are they sold out?
We're about somewhere between 3/4 and 4/5 of the way back to where we were in 2019.
So there's
100%.
room.
Yes, there's room.
Is parking lower in the summer because a lot of people are taking vacations, and so therefore the parking goes down?
Yeah,
Lightly.
there's seasonal fluctuations. It's low in the summer and it's low during over the holiday break.
Yeah, so you might have a little more parking in the garage. It would be nice to fill the garage up all week long. And then, of course, you've got the parking lot at Chestnut and Church, which hardly ever has anybody in it during the day, during the week. It's pretty empty. So anyway, I'm collecting petitions. I am going to ask if when you move this on to council, you move it without a recommendation so that it can be discussed and decided there. And I will have probably at least 500 signatures. No one has turned me down yet, except one person who I promised I would bring the complaint. They didn't sign it because his wife did. He did not. He liked the street closure. He doesn't like the street lights. He doesn't know why they're flashing red. Leave them regular red and green. And I promised I'm going to bring that, so I'm bringing it to you. So that's the only thing I have. But no one has turned me down. And I think the retail stores are for it. I can understand some of the people, you know, like maybe Taylor Music. It's a little bit harder for his people to get in, the attorneys, because it's harder. I don't worry about them. They're making enough money. So, you know, I won't worry about them. There was one more thing I had to say, and I've forgotten what it was. If I think about it, I'll come back up. But if you have any questions, as I said, we're collecting petitions. I'm planning on being at the my polling booth tomorrow to get some more names.
Did it come up for deliveries as being an obstacle at all?
No, well, I've talked to several of the restaurants, and they just want you to figure it out because they get so much more business. You know, they get a lot more business when the street is closed. I will say, I was in the food industry for 25 years. You know, I was head of the sales department, DeWalt Packing Company. And so I dealt a lot with distributors. All of that's computerized. So if we said that you had to make your deliveries between 7 and 9, Cisco was one of the big ones that come. They throw it in their computer and they'd move everything around and they'd figure out, I mean, that's what they do, is they have limitations everywhere in a lot of different places. There are a lot of large restaurants that can only take deliveries at a certain time. So if the borough decide that we could get trucks through between 7, maybe till 9 o'clock in the morning, those big distributors, particular people like Sedona and stuff, they'll make those adjustments. I mean, it's business. They like business.
And how about the extension from early May through October?
Everybody wanted as long as you could do it, and given climate change, you could probably keep it open until January, because look at this is ridiculous. But no, a lot of people were saying they'd like it to start in May, and they were kind of like, why can't I've had several people say leave it closed till Christmas. So I don't think anyone wants to shorten it. They want it lengthened. And I've talked to a lot of people. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, thanks very much. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, thank you.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Will there be any compensation to the borough from those using the street? Thank you.
So the one thing I did discuss with some of the restaurants and whatnot would be probably a fee, and would be based upon the size of their restaurant. So for example, Stove and Tap and Saloon would pay a much larger fee because they have a much larger audience that they can entertain, as opposed to some other restaurants. I think that could help alleviate the overtime costs over time.
Yeah, I think if we went that route, I would think of it kind of like in the same vein as a platform fee, maybe by like square foot of road space used by tables. I think is something that could make a lot of sense. I'm not I'm not sold on that as a concept, but I could see that being helpful and kind of helping.
Well, from an equity perspective, I mean, all the restaurants on Market and other places that have to pay for the platforms, but the other ones, if the street's closed, not paying for it doesn't seem fair.
Right. I understand. I like totally understand and agree with that issue. I also I do worry sometimes that we get a little scared of doing like something good in one area because it's not going to help everyone equally. And I just worry a little bit that sometimes that can prevent us from doing good things in general. So that's something I always try to keep in mind. But I think that might be a good way to keep things fair, for sure. Any other questions, comments, concerns on this? Can I ask, was there a conversation about doing like a red light, green light cycle to cross Gay Street when it's shut down? Is that something that's been talked about? Because I feel like I remember it, but I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about with PennDOT a few times. I'm looking at Don Edwards because he might need some help with remembering the conversation. But I believe they're the ones regulating the signal controls, and that's why they are what they are. I don't think it's very effective, having been out there myself and having a flashing light and a 4-foot tall stop sign that isn't always paid attention to.
Okay, great. Yeah, but I definitely think that's a concern that we should think about for sure. Any other comments, questions? And are we going to put this on work session for next time just to get like the temperature of council as a whole? Yeah, I think that's a good idea to do it without recommendation. Does that sound good? Okay, great. And then we need to do 4A, which is approve our October meeting minutes, which I had no issues with. Okay, do that 3A.
Approved.
All right. Any other business tonight? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn at 5:55. Thank you.